Welcome to an extraordinary edition of Rebellion's educational series. I have NASA astronaut Nicole Stott to talk with us today about life in space. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Really nice to be here.
So you spent 103 days in space at the ISS. Wow. What an experience. Could you tell us
Wow, that's what I say too.
yeah. What was the hardest part of it? Was there a time you thought you'd break?
No, thankfully. And I don't think really anybody does. I think we train so much for, all the stuff we think could go wrong.
Yes, at the undersea station I saw you trained at. I'm an avid scuba diver, and so
Oh,
I saw.
highly
Yes.
recommend it then. Highly recommend the Aquarius habitat. Yes.
Every year or two, the storm, knocks it around. It actually was taken as much as 12 miles, maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I think but it's an amazing place to be able to live underwater. And so, how much did that help you?
Well, that was really wonderful. And yeah, it's really sad when you see that happening. They're still recovering, I think, from that one storm. But
Yeah.
that was absolutely the best analog to what it's like to live and work in space. I mean,
Really?
from every aspect of it, because you're in a real extreme environment. You're not faking it. It's not like there's an SUV waiting out the door that you could open the door and go out and leave when you want to. It's and you go down to 60 feet of depth and you spend over an hour there. You're not coming up anytime soon or quickly because of all the nitrogen in your body. So we get saturated. We spent almost 3 weeks there, and it was outstanding. Yeah.
The little deep sea diving I've done, I've really had to kind of compartmentalize who I am and just kind of sit back in a low gear and accept this kind of new world I'm in. And so I imagine you had to do something like that for 103 days.
Yeah, for the spaceflight time, it's for sure. We spend so much time training out of the country and in places that are unusual for us that I think it becomes kind of a normal thing almost to be in this place that's different. And
Were
then
you prepared for the first shuttle flight? Well, for the first shuttle flight, they say there's that amazing feeling. Can you tell us about the actual takeoff?
Yeah, well, it is amazing. I will use that word. It's one of those things I don't think anything really prepares you for it from kind of the human sensory side. You're prepared for all of the technical side of it. But we get out there a couple hours ahead of launch. You're strapped in, you're laying on your back, you get really kind of comfy. And then it's probably at about that 20-minute before launch where the crew started getting actively involved with the countdown. But it's not until I think that iconic 10, 9, 8 that we all know of a countdown to space that you start to believe you might actually really go to space that day. And then when the zero comes and those solid rocket boosters lit, I mean, it was like, I remember my brain flashing to think, holy moly, was I ever on a launch pad? Because you're just kind of kicked in the back and then feels like 3 of you are piling on top of you as you start to accelerate. And and in 8.5 minutes, you've gone from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour, and you're circling the planet every 90 minutes. It's a pretty incredible, dynamic, all of those words, intense, awesome ride to space.
Do you feel sick at some point, or is it?
I didn't. I was prepared to not feel good just because having spoken to people who didn't feel good when they got there. But I think it's interesting, all of us react a little bit differently to getting to space and to coming home from space. And there's nothing about the way your body here on Earth responds to motion and, motion sickness that's going to tell you how you're going to respond getting to or coming home from space. So I was really fortunate getting to space and just feeling good.
Were your dreams, did they take place in space, or were you back on Earth?
It was a mix. I started dreaming more about being in space because I was experiencing that, I think. But they did change. It was interesting to me. Before I flew to space, I used to always have that dream from as young as I can remember, that dream where and maybe you've had it, where you're running and you jump and you try to fly. And in the dream, sometimes you can fly, but sometimes you can't. And, I always remember trying to psych that out. What was the reason? And once I flew in space, I've never had that dream again. And I guess it's because my body knows that feeling of moving just effortlessly, floating in 3 dimensions, that I don't have to dream about that anymore. I dream about being in space, but I don't have that run and jump dream anymore.
I have many repetitive dreams. One that I'm stuck at a ski resort constantly, but I've actually never had a dream that I was running and then flying.
No, you might now that I put it in your brain.
Well, I have a repetitive dream about being on a plane crash. And so Rebellion Research has studied plane crashes in depth. And actually, I've done a number of TV appearances on 737 MAX talking about how intelligence systems fail when one of the inputs is compromised. But, that's, what we're really concentrated on, though, is when you were in space, did you have, any kind of nightmares also? Was there a repetitive nightmare that you had? We know from Apollo 13, they chronicled, the wife of the main astronaut, that she had this repetitive dream about her husband's space capsule falling apart. And they even, and so when they made Apollo 13, that was something specific that Ron Howard wanted to include within the film. And so I was just wondering if you had a repetitive nightmare about any type of incident, especially given the 2 incidents that happened with space shuttles.
No, I didn't. I don't remember anything like that. And thankfully, I guess, I don't know that it would make you all that comfortable if you kept having something like that occur during a space mission.
Was the spacewalk scary?
It wasn't scary. It was another one of those things where I think there's just this deliberateness and diligence that kind of the care you take when you're doing a spacewalk. It's a total respect for the environment you're in. It's a knowledge of kind of the threats and the extreme environment that you are in. But I don't think it's fear. I think it's more an understanding of just how respectful you have to be of where you are and your equipment and your buddy and the people you're communicating with, to make sure that you stay safe while you're doing something like that.
I mean, I get a fear of height when I'm on a chairlift going skiing. Did you ever get a fear of height ever? Just spacewalking, looking down at the Earth, or just on the ISS looking down and feeling how high up you were?
Not there, but I get that same fear on the chairlift, or when I'm hiking and I'm at the edge of the cliff, or when I'm in the hotel room that's really, however many stories up and it's just the big glass window looking down into that I don't like. But I did not feel it during the spacewalk, thankfully.
So do you have a calling to go to Mars at this point?
Wow. I think if I could take my family, and if I knew that we could come home back to Earth, I think I would love to go to Mars. I'd love to go to the moon, though. I would definitely love to go to the moon.
Now, when you have a family, you have an obligation. And so, I guess one has to, so many of our astronauts had families and they risked their lives either way. And in life, you have to risk your life. So it's just something you can't avoid. But, when you get...
Yeah, well, I mean, my son was 7 when I flew the first time. So it is an interesting balance. And I think that's why, hopefully the other astronauts you've spoken to would share this feeling, is that you don't just go launch on a rocket because it's going to be fun. It's going to be this adventure. I think it has to be about the mission itself, really understanding that you're doing or participating in something that's doing greater good. Yeah.
Well, astronaut Mike Mullane was always very scared and would have white knuckles. And he actually said that he was more scared on the space shuttle than when he was in combat in Vietnam as a gunner's pilot, which is interesting because astronauts Ron Guerin and Tom Jones both loved the shuttle. And in fact, Tom Jones talked about the shuttle as the most intricate and exquisite instrument ever built by mankind at its time.
I would agree with Tom. And I would say that now, based on what we did with the space shuttle, and, you look at the space shuttle and I mean, it just, honestly, in all of its years and all of its 135 flights, it really performed beautifully, all of its tasks. And for something that was, designed by a committee, everybody wanted it to do everything. And it really did all of those things wonderfully. And then because of that, I think we've got this masterpiece called the International Space Station as well.
I've studied both incidents in depth, and I would attribute challenger to, the one director from the NASA Center who, mixed with thiokol, but that was not the shuttle's fault. I'd say also then with the second incident, debris hit it. And so that's a mixed bag. Do you blame the shuttle? Because one could say that was also human error because that debris should have been accounted for. So in some ways, the shuttle itself was flawless as an instrument. It just wasn't, applied. It wasn't, distributed perfectly by NASA.
Well, we put the human in the loop. We've got to, we what I think we're looking at now, with the new vehicles that are being built, based on the history with shuttle and the spacecraft before it, is that we really want to do our best not to learn the same lessons over again, right? To take those human, perhaps, errors into account and make sure we don't do those things again. Because I'm sure you've got this mathematician's brain, I think, that is probably figuring already what is the risk of doing some of these things. And what we don't want to do is lay that burden of old issues on it. We already have enough things probably that could get us that we don't know about and that we need to deal with and be proactive about. So, but I would agree with Tom, exquisite that's a really wonderful word to use.
When you first toured the shuttle before you took off, did you get butterflies? Or did you ever have a butterflies moment really before your first takeoff?
I think it was more of a feeling of kind of this churny feeling of, holy moly, I'm actually going to get to do this.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like it should be something that can become real, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had the opportunity. I worked for 10 years as a NASA engineer on the space shuttle program at Kennedy Space Center. So I knew the hardware. I knew the people who believed the care and feeding of those spacecraft were their responsibility. So
after years of Pratt and Whitney, let's add as well.
I was with Pratt and Whitney for a year, and then
a year.
Yeah, and that was wonderful too because it showed me, another side of the engineering world that perhaps wasn't for me, but that I was very thankful somebody else really wants to do, because, I look at the engineering that goes into some of these aircraft and jet engines that then, also goes into creating these wonderfully productive turbo pumps and things that help us go to space. And, very thankful for the people that do that. Yeah.
I hate to bring it to the mundane, but did the ISS smell? What was...
The things that smelled on the ISS were us, were the people. And so, but not bad. I mean, we wore our clothes to work out in, and, we'd let each other know if they got to the point where they were stinking too much and had to go in the trash can, but generally no. And then when food was up close and near to you, it smelled really good. But everything is pretty much unscented. I'm leaning to let my dog out.
Oh, sure, of course.
There you go, puppy. Yeah. But yeah, generally not a whole lot of smells on the station.
Oh.
See me coming in and out? Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, no, take your time, astronaut.
The joy of being at home, which is good.
We're in no rush. Everybody loves dogs. So
yeah.
I think at this point, it's pretty okay. But so in 104 days, you never had one safety issue, not one time where you were scared up there?
Well, I can't say we didn't have any safety issues. We had, the alarms going off in the middle of the night and things like that. But, and I think it's one of these things where it's not so much a fear, but really using the adrenaline for good, right?
Yeah.
Putting all of that energy into doing whatever is humanly possible to solve the problem, right? With your crew and realizing that the training we do on the ground is very, very effective. And I just watched in awe. I mean, I was so proud of our crew when something like that would happen where, oh my gosh, we're all coming together. We're making sure we're all taken care of. We're acknowledging the alarm. We're dealing with it as we were trained. And then, and then you can chill and shake a little bit afterwards once you get it all under control.
A big question I've got to ask, I was thinking as soon as I started reading about your biography, is on the two shuttles, Discovery versus Atlantis. Did you have a preference? Did you think one was better than the other? Can you compare the two?
I don't know if I'd say one was better than the other. I mean, they both did a very special job for me, right? On my first flight, Discovery took me to space and Atlantis brought me home. So I'm very thankful to both of them. Discovery, I think, probably holds a little bit dearer place in that it was one of the vehicles that I was a lead engineer on and manager for when I worked at Kennedy Space Center. And then I had the joy, honestly, of flying with the crew on its final flight. So I don't think that one was really better than the other, just that, one might be a little bit closer to me.
And on your reentry, was that where you really get a sense of how fast you were going?
Yeah, I mean, on launch, you know you're going someplace fast.
Yes.
Just hope it's the right place. On reentry, it was interesting. It wasn't until we were down low enough, and you've probably experienced this on an airplane too, where when you're flying through clear blue sky air, and you look down, you're like, wow, you really don't get this sense of, but then when the clouds start coming by, you start noticing it. And the same thing was true for landing on the shuttle to me. It was just like, wow, it just felt like this graceful kind of sweeping motion all the way in until I caught sight of like land and clouds moving past us. And it's just like, wow, we are moving super fast.
And Howard Hughes spent God knows how much money on his Hell's Angels movie to make sure that they had clouds so that the perspective of fast flight was, observed. So no, very, very, very cool. What about the pink vortex before you can come in? Do you know the time when you're kind of on reentry? It was described as like a pink vortex tube. Can you speak to that?
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard that. So thanks for that. I know, there's that point where we've re-entered the atmosphere. You're moving super fast. You've got this friction, this energy, and the kind of the plasma, this glow around the shuttle. But I don't think I know what you mean by the pink vortex.
It was on the biography done on the Challenger. John Young is passed, so is the other astronaut, and he spoke to when on his reentry he felt that there was like a pink vortex, a tube of all these colors, and then as soon as the colors dissipated, he saw the desert of California.
Wow. I'm going to go back and read that or watch that.
It's on Netflix. It's wonderful.
I'll see that, because John was very you said to me that you speak in a blunt way. John had a way of doing that too. And so to have something kind of like that come out, I'd love to see that. Yeah.
Did you have a mentor ever at NASA? Was there, I know Mattingly was someone that a lot of people looked up to and people felt he was, the smartest people in the history of the planet. Was there ever anyone that kind of you looked up to or took an extra hand for you?
I think there were quite a few people. When I think about my time at Kennedy Space Center that led me to the astronaut office, I mean, there's two people in particular. That would be Jay Honeycutt and Tip Talone. They were two people that I very thankful to. George Abbey was a dear friend that helped me, and has been supportive all along. And then, within the astronaut office itself, I think of people like Alan Bean, who I think for me are kind of like a hero from both the space flight, astronaut side of things and the art side of things. And many, many people within the office that it's just, I think it's a place where people are always trying to lift each other up, in one way or another. So you feel like you're being mentored and supported in so many ways.
Your passion for space is evident and really wonderful to see. So can I ask, did you know you wanted to be an astronaut as a little girl, or was there a catalyst at some point in your life?
I think there was a catalyst. I look or think back now on, kind of that early inspiration, and I really credit mostly, my parents who shared what they loved with me and my sisters. They just did. My mom was very creative. She sewed all of our clothes growing up. I can't even imagine doing that. If I was going to get to a ballet lesson or softball practice, it was because of her. My dad built and flew small airplanes, and I got this love of flying for sure. I am old enough that I was, I watched the first moon landing and was in awe of that. I mean, I think even as a kid of 6.5 or 7, that's a really extraordinary thing that you're seeing happen. But it was much later for me. I was already working for NASA when I started thinking about, astronaut as a possibility, because up to that point, nobody had told me I couldn't do it. But I just always thought, wow, that's something other special people get to do. Why would they ever pick me? Why should I ever even consider it, you know? And I honestly, if it hadn't been for people like Jay and Tip that I mentioned, who just encouraged me to pick up the pen and fill out the application, I don't think I would have done it on my own. But working at Kennedy, I saw that, you know, 99.9% of an astronaut's job is not flying in space. It's here on Earth, supporting other missions, helping develop new vehicles, all of those kinds of things. But I also realized that about 80% of it, as far as I could tell at that point, was a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer. And so with other people's encouragement, I actually just did the one thing that I had total control of, which was pick up the pen and fill out the application. And I am eternally grateful to those people for encouraging me to do just that. Yeah.
Would you say you need an engineering background though to be an astronaut, or can you have just an aviation background specifically?
I think so. In fact, I think that there's a lot of career paths that would make for successful astronauts. I think the thing that we deal with right now is that, you know, if you look at it, we don't have a whole lot of flight opportunities, right? And so when you have, what was it, the last class that got selected, there were almost 10,000 applications, I think, or maybe over 10,000 applications. And so at this point, I think we restrict the education and the career background just so we can, you know, bring it down to a manageable number of you know, qualified applicants. I think there are so many people from so many different backgrounds that could totally do this job. Yeah. And
we discussed before the program started The Right Stuff, and that, you know, that book, which is an American, you know, classic, you know, really just chronicles how amazing it was to become an astronaut, how tough the road was, and how special you really had to be. And so, you know, for myself, growing up, you know, as just a, you know, American kid in the 90s, you know, for us astronauts, you know, we're very much our heroes. So the opportunity to be able to speak to you today has been absolutely fantastic, and really one of my you know, life's high points. So I thank you so much, Astronaut Stott.
Wow, thank you. Thanks for including me. It makes me very happy that you're excited about space, and that you're sharing it this way with so many other people.
It's space is really one of the subjects that, you know, I think has a huge interest throughout the world. Sounds like a great dog. So
he is one of the good ones, yeah.
Well, be well, and live long and prosper.
You too. Happy Definitely. 2021.
Yes. Star Trek Undiscovered Country is my favorite. Just so
nice.
You know, that's the one with the, you know, Chancellor Gorkon. They fake the.
Anyway. Yeah, very good.
Be well. Thank you for talking to our viewers.